Well, the main story we're talking about on Talk Drive today is Hamas using the European Convention on Human Rights to challenge its prescription as a terrorist organisation in the UK. One of the barristers behind that at Garden Court Chambers is Frank McGinnis, who joins me now. Frank, good evening.
Good evening. Good day, Martatu. How are you?
Tell me, Frank, I don't want to mischaracterise this. This case, to me anyway, and tell me if I'm wrong, is specifically saying that Hamas should not be prescribed as a terrorist organisation in the UK.
Yes, that's right. It's not a case yet, is it? It's an application, and it's for the Secretary of State to decide it one way or the other. And if she decides that she doesn't want to deprescribe, then it becomes a case if my client, Hamas, decides to appeal that decision to the judiciary.
Have you, we hear about barristers taking cases on the taxi rank and so on, especially in criminal cases. Have you decided to take this case?
What do you mean?
Has it been your decision to take this case? You've been instructed and you've decided to take the case?
Who else would have decided to take the case? I don't understand. So of course I decide what cases I take.
How do you sleep at night?
That's a baffling question because, I mean, do you want me to answer that question? I will if you want.
Yeah, I mean, Hamas are terrorists, aren't they? It's so unbelievably clear.
All right, so I'm going to answer your question. You shouldn't have asked it, but I will answer your question.
I shouldn't have asked it. We have this thing called free speech in this country, so I can ask whatever I like. Perhaps you can answer it.
I will answer the question. It's just you're talking over me. Did you want to hear my answer?
Yeah.
All right. I need you to listen to my answer very carefully because what you've done is extremely dangerous and you shouldn't have asked that question, all right? So please do listen to my response, and when I'm done, I'll say next question, all right? You have just asked me, how do I sleep at night? And what you're trying to do by saying that is you're trying to fix me, you're trying to associate me with my client. There is a very well-established
representing them, Frank. You're representing them. You've decided to this is a conversation. I'm not going to be told whether I can talk or not talk. You've decided to represent them.
So you've invited me to talk over me because you're afraid of what I have to say, is that right?
I'm not afraid of what you have to say, but you're saying that I'm associating you with them.
You seem afraid. You seem afraid.
Afraid? We're having a conversation and I'm asking you...
Well, at the bar, we tend to let each other speak. Is that not the convention?
I'm not a barrister, I'm an interviewer, and you're saying that I'm associating you with your client. You have told me that you have decided to represent Hamas. They are an unspeakably horrific and dreadful organisation.
Oh,
so yes, I am associating you with them. Because you've decided to represent them.
Okay, I think you might be hearing from the police. I mean, I don't know, but it sounds like you might, because the point is that, you know, the low point of this, on this side of the Irish Sea, was Boris Johnson and Priti Patel using the phrase activist lawyers. They knew what they were doing. They were using it to stoke anti-migrant racism. And then a man showed up with a knife at the law firm, calling by name for a solicitor who I know, because they put a target on his back. And the low point on the Irish side of the Irish Sea is Pat Finucane, of course, right? A British MP stood up in Parliament and said he's just like his client. Pat Finucane represented members of the Provisional IRA, which is another proscribed organisation. And 3 weeks later, Pat Finucane was, of course, murdered in front of his family by loyalist paramilitaries who we now know had handlers in the British establishment. So you're playing the same game. Don't talk over me.
Let's talk about Hamas. I'll talk over if you want to. No, excuse me.
You're playing the same game.
I'm not playing any games. I'm not playing any games.
You just put a target on my back.
I'm not putting a target on anybody's back. I am asking you. No, I don't.
You owe me an apology.
No, I don't. I'm asking you why you've decided. Why have you decided to represent Hamas?
Next question.
Why have you decided to represent Hamas?
Did you not hear me say next question? I'm not answering your question.
You're not answering the question about why you've decided to represent Hamas.
You're trying to make this a story about me. Talk about the application.
You have decided to represent Hamas. I think people are interested as to why you've decided to do that, because
you're trying to make me the story.
They're a terrorist organisation.
You're deliberately putting a target on my back.
I'm absolutely not doing that. I'm asking you
if there are negative consequences, I'm holding you personally responsible.
I'm asking you a perfectly relevant and reasonable question, which is why have you decided to represent Hamas when you did not have to do that?
Let's talk about how there's a crisis of Zionism because it's committing a genocide. Do you agree that Israel is committing a genocide?
No. So
if I'm right that it is, and if South Africa's government is right that it is, that would make you a genocide denier, would it? Is that what you are? You deny genocide, do you?
We've gone very, very quickly from me asking you a perfectly reasonable question, which you're refusing to answer, to you alleging that I'm a genocide denier, which I would argue is defamatory.
You literally denied the genocide. It's not defamatory.
I'm not denying it. I'm not denying it. It is not a genocide.
Yeah, so if I said if I'm right,
it is factually not. Well, you're tying yourself up in knots. I would ask the question again: why have you decided to represent Hamas?
Well, there's lots of ways to answer that question. the obvious answer is to say that we're witnessing a terminal crisis of Zionism and that Israel's apartheid state is collapsing in front of our eyes. And that raises difficult questions for the Secretary of State about what will happen if and when Israel goes the way of South Africa. South African apartheid, of course, collapsed in 1994. And as the Irish example, right, the Provisional IRA was, of course, an illegal organization, and yet its political wing started winning elections. In the South African example, the British government, of course, called for Mandela to be executed. That's what they wanted, and he's now regarded as a hero, right? So he was maligned as a terrorist. And whatever people think of Hamas, and of course, a lot of people will oppose what Hamas stand for and what they've done. The point about this application is to say you don't have to support a prescribed organization to think that it shouldn't be prescribed. If people want to read the arguments that the application is based on, they can go to the website.
Perhaps you could tell us why you don't think Hamas should be a prescribed organization.
The documents have been uploaded to, so hamascase.com has all of the pleadings if people are interested to read those
perhaps
arguments.
You could summarise them for us now and tell us your belief why you don't think Hamas should be a prescribed organisation.
Well, it's not about my belief. I'm a lawyer instructed to make some legal arguments, which is what I've done, along with my colleagues. And it's not possible to understand the application without understanding the broader context. It's, as I've said, we're witnessing the collapse of an apartheid regime, and that means that extraordinary things will happen in those extraordinary circumstances. And that's why my client has taken this extraordinary step to approach the British Home Secretary and to say, look, there are a number of reasons why the Terrorism Act should no longer be applied to this organisation.
I think there are a number of people who will find it absolutely extraordinary that there is anyone who believes and anyone who would represent an organisation who is putting forward the argument legally that Hamas isn't a terrorist organisation and shouldn't be prescribed.
That's interesting. So you're saying that you think Hamas shouldn't be entitled to legal representation?
I'm saying that they're a terrorist organisation who have done absolutely horrendous things, and I don't want them anywhere near my country. I'm happy that they're prescribed. I'm happy that there's documented evidence of what they have done. And also, if you don't want to be a prescribed organisation, why not, I would say to Hamas, release the 59 hostages who are currently in Gaza?
So you're saying that people who take hostages should be prescribed organisations?
I'm saying that Hamas should be a prescribed organisation because it has taken hostages. I haven't mentioned anybody else or any other, or Israel or any other aspect of this. I'm talking about Hamas itself. I'm not talking about whataboutery. I'm talking about Hamas, which is a terrorist organisation that I think should be prescribed.
Well, look, okay, that's interesting. The point is that the definition of terrorism in the Terrorism Act 2000 is very broad. And basically, almost any organisation that's using violence to commit a political purpose to advance a political purpose is caught by that definition, right? So the Ukrainian forces in their war against Russia, they would be caught by the definition. Israel, of course, would be caught by the definition. So what that means legally.
You've also said that the British Armed Forces would be covered by the definition. So it is the contention of your action that the British Armed Forces should be deemed a terrorist organisation. Is that correct?
No, you've misunderstood. What I'm saying.
Explain it to me.
Yeah, I'm trying to. So this is my point, right? The definition of terrorism in the Act is extremely broad, and most organisations like the ones you just mentioned, the ones I was mentioning, are caught by it. And what that means is the Secretary of State has an extremely broad discretion to decide who she wants to add to that list. Of course, this organisation, the political wing of Hamas, was added to the list of prescribed organisations in 2021. The military wing was added more than 2 decades ago. And so because that discretion is so broad, what we're saying is that there are ways to legally challenge the exercise of the discretion in this case. And all we've done is to set out some entirely sensible, thoughtful, well-reasoned arguments about why the time has come for the Secretary of State to revisit the decision of her predecessor, Priti Patel, who was, of course, politically compromised and highly criticised for her dealings with the apartheid state of Israel, and to consider, of course, the position in international law, which confirms that people like Palestinians who are under occupation, I mean, this is a settled position in international law that people under occupation have a right to use armed force to resist. So Palestinians have a right to pick.
Am I getting it clear, and tell me if I'm wrong, that you believe that Hamas have a right to use armed force to represent their position?
You keep asking me what I believe, which again is it's not quite as blatant and disgusting as your previous question. But
what's interesting
it's not about
is
what I
that
believe.
Hamas said, well, I mean, you're representing these people and you've chosen to do so. So presumably it has something to do with what you believe.
Do you not understand how the legal system works?
Yes, I do, and I understand that you didn't have to take the case. If I were a lawyer and if someone came to me, I would say there's not in a million years would I represent Hamas. They are a disgusting, horrendous, anti-Semitic, dreadful terrorist organisation. That's what I would say. You didn't say that, and I'm very interested as to why.
Because you're trying to make the story about me instead of this important application because you're not a serious journalist, is that right?
The hour of
Can't go
judgment shall not come until the Muslims fight the Jews and kill them. So what the Jews hide behind trees and stones, and each tree and stone will say, O Muslim, O servant of Allah, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him, except for a specific tree, which is the tree of Jews. There is no solution for the Palestinian question except through jihad. That is what Hamas believe, and I would not represent an organisation that believed that, and you have chosen to.
Where's that quote from?
The first one is from the Hamas Charter Article 7, and the second one is from Hamas Charter Article 13.
Which year was that charter passed in?
I don't have it in front of me.
You don't know, do you? You're out of your depth, aren't you?
Out of my depth, right. Well, I'll tell you what Ismail Haniyeh said.
You're quoting a document from 1988, right? And it's clear that that document has been widely criticised.
So
Hamas
doesn't want to kill Jews then? Hamas doesn't want to destroy the state of Israel? Is that what you're saying?
Let me just respond. So that document you're referring to is the 1988 Charter. I know you don't know what you're talking about, which is fine. You're allowed to be a bit out of your depth. There's 600 pages of supporting evidence in this application, and you've not had a chance to read it. I, of course, have worked on it extensively. So it's fair enough that there's an asymmetry here. Like, I'm not trying to trick you. It's just you're quoting a document that's more than 30 years out of date.
Well, let me tell you what was said in 2023 by Ismail Haniyeh. Let me tell you what the Hamas senior leader Ismail Haniyeh said on the loss of civilian life in Gaza.
Perhaps you're deliberately misleading your viewers. Have you read?
I don't think any of my viewers are under any misapprehension about what Hamas stands for. I don't think you're under any misapprehension.
You just misled them. You didn't tell them about the 2017 Charter. Why didn't you? Because you don't know what you're talking about.
On the 26th of October,
it's okay to admit that you're ignorant. That's fine.
On the 26th of October, the Hamas senior leader Ismail Haniyeh, commenting on the loss of civilian life in Gaza, said, "The blood of the women, children and elderly, we are the ones who need this blood, so it awakens within us the revolutionary spirit." We also have Ghazi Hamid on the 24th of October 2023 saying that he would repeat the 7th of October attacks time and again until Israel is annihilated. I don't see a huge difference between that and what was said in 1988, I must say.
What became of Ismail Haniyeh?
Well, we know what became of him because Israel assassinated him.
All right. All of these things are addressed extensively in the application. It's of course correct that Hamas should have to answer to things that they say and do, and they do extensively in the application. I encourage people to read it. It will cast light on the subject in a way that you're not even pretending to do. You're not trying to have a dialogue with me about what's actually happening. You're talking across me and trying to present. How would you
characterise what Hamas is doing, if not terrorism? How would you characterise it?
Well, the whole point that's being made in the argument, in the application, is that the definition of terrorism is extremely broad. And so basically any organisation that thinks that their strategy is best advanced by the use of armed struggle will be caught by that definition. That's a central part of the whole application. Does that make sense?
It does make perfect sense to me, but what I would wonder is how you can argue that Hamas isn't a terrorist organisation if the definition is so broad.
Well, by that logic, Israel's a terrorist organisation. Do you agree?
No.
Well, think about it. Come on, man, think it through. If you agree the definition is very, very broad, then the Secretary of State could say, right, clearly it applies to Israel.
But you said it about Hamas,
they're doing a genocide.
But you're arguing the counter
to this.
Violent.
I'm going to say that the IDF is a terrorist organisation. She could do that if she wanted. She literally could. Why shouldn't she? They're doing a genocide.
Why shouldn't she? It's not a genocide. It is factually not a genocide.
Well, the South African government, the Irish government, the Spanish government, the Belgian government disagrees with you. Oh, you know better than them, do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're wrong. They're wrong.
All right. Who asked you? What do you know? You obviously don't. You're out of your depth. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. I think the phenomenal submissions that we saw in the South African genocide case are far more persuasive than any of the sort of ridiculous talking points that you're propagating here. It's okay, mate. You're allowed to not know what you're talking about, but why don't you just admit it to your viewers? You don't know what you're talking about. You're out of your depth. Everyone can see it.
Frank, thanks for your help. That's Frank McGinnis there. He's a barrister at Garden Court Chambers. He's one of the lawyers behind the case that is arguing that Hamas are not terrorists and should be de-prescribed. What do you think of what he has to say? 0344 499 1000. Stay with us here on Talk.